Have you ever wondered how many riddles can be hidden underwater? The oceans cover 2/3 of the planet's surface. Therefore, it's normal to consider the seas as historical records of humanity. Just think of the number of ships that were wrecked in the face of heavy storms. Remember, this was the only existing connection between islands and continents before the creation of the airplane. We've traveled all over the internet searching for the most amazing and mysterious mythological objects divers have found underwater. And now we're going to present them to you. Before we begin, make sure you hit that subscribe button to get notified every day for more amazing content. With that being said, let's begin. Number 5. The Ship That Challenged God. Wednesday, April 10th, 1912 would become an important day for humanity. For, at 12 o'clock noon, the most luxurious and largest ship that had ever been built would sail from an English port. A ship from which novels would be written and movies would be made. The most famous Titanic. The wonderful thing about this ship is that in it were some of the most richest people in the world, although there were also among its passengers hundreds of Irish, British, and Scandinavian immigrants. They all had one thing in common: the desire of finding a better life in the United States. The ship had been designed to be the most ostentatious and comfortable means of maritime transportation. It had gyms, swimming pools, libraries, restaurants, and luxurious cabins. Of course, these would only be used by those traveling in first class. This was the first trip the Titanic made, crossing the entire Atlantic Ocean. However, the sunset on April 14th would be the last many of the passengers would ever see. We're sure you know the story. The Titanic hit an iceberg in the early morning, and it didn't take longer than a few hours for it to sink into the icy ocean. It's impossible to deny that this is one of the greatest marine tragedies in history. Everyone knows this ship. We all love its history and the mysteries that surround it. But have you seen images of the conditions that it's currently in? As you can see, the bow of the ship has been damaged by water. A sticky surface covers the entire ship, giving it a ghostly and gloomy appearance. The windows, the doors, the cabins, and common use areas are no longer what they once were. Time has passed and has stolen the ship's magnificence. Now they're just the remains of a story and a dream that was never achieved. Instead of marveling, the boat produces fear and sadness for its appearance. Many people would have loved to walk through its corridors, listen to music in the restaurants, and wander along its stern, live the experience of traveling on the largest ship of all times. However, we must settle with seeing these images or watching James Cameron's film over and over again. What do you think if a man said tomorrow, "I have built a replica of the Titanic, and it will make the journey its predecessor couldn't meet across the Atlantic? It will also depart from the same port." Would you buy a ticket? Would you dare to get on it? Number 4. The Pyramid of Japan. If you've ever asked yourself, where can I find pyramids other than Egypt? This list is a little long. There are Inca pyramids in Peru, the Nubian pyramids in Sudan, or the ruins of the pyramids in ancient Mesopotamia. All of them have something in common. Of course, besides their triangular shape, all pyramids are located above the Earth's surface. Today we won't talk about any of them, but a very different one. This building is part of a 1987 discovery. A group of divers were touring Yonaguni Island when they observed a stone structure that caught their attention. They didn't understand what they have just discovered, nor the archaeological importance of it. The most amazing mysteries hadn't been brought to light until this group of adventurers dived there. They photographed this impressive structure from the prehistoric era. Later, it was discovered, thanks to experts, that the pyramid had been built by the most qualified and advanced labor of all time. Among the scientists who showed interest in the ruins are the marine geologist Masaki Kimura. He dedicated 18 years of his life to measuring, studying, and mapping the characteristics of the Yonaguni monument, the name by which it was baptized. But if you're interested in knowing how the city came to be underwater, the most likely theories state it ended up there because of a natural disaster, like an earthquake and subsequent tsunami. Remember, Japan is in a seismic region. It wouldn't surprise you that strong earthquakes are taken as a common thing in the area. In fact, it's recorded that the largest tsunami in the world hit Yonaguni in 1771 and had a height of 40 meters. A similar event could have taken place where the ancient civilization occupied the structure. The geologist Kimura presented his report and a model made by a computer in 2007, in which the ruins are observed. According to this man, there are 10 submerged structures in Yonaguni, and 5 other similar structures on the main island of Okinawa. In addition, the city has a huge network of buildings, including castles and monuments. All are connected by an elaborate system of what appear to be roads and waterways. Based upon the age of stalactites found in underwater caves that sank next to the city, Cremura estimates that this site has about 5,000 years of history. Remember, they can only be formed above water during extremely slow processes. Now what do you think? Do you have a different vision of Japan? Number 3. The Lost City of Heraklion. Following the track of lost cities, in the middle of our top 5 we have a discovery that archaeologists and British marine experts say belong to the city of Heraklion. The clue that helped reveal this enigma was a gold plaque dating from the 3rd century BC. Despite having been underwater for more than 1,000 years, still remained in excellent condition. So far, Heraklion had been recorded by fables of ancient texts, but the entrance to the land of the pharaohs was real. The gold plaque was discovered near a sacred ritual channel of the Godio Temple, and currently it's exhibited in the Greco-Roman Museum of Alexandria. It's considered by many to be an incredible find, since Heraklion is considered a dreamy and fantasy place. The city, according to records, owned one of the largest ports in all of Egypt and operated as a commercial entrance long before the construction of Alexandria. Recent explorations have discovered that the largest temple that had been dedicated to Amun is also located there. According to the legends, this city had been visited by famous characters of the Iliad, Paris and Helen of Troy. In fact, it's narrated how the two lovers escaped to the city, fleeing her husband, the king of Sparta, Menelaus. However, Thonis, keeper of the Nile port, denied them the entry into the city. Many secrets still haunt this ancient city. We only know it was submerged 1,200 years ago by a series of natural disasters, which includes earthquakes, flooding of the Nile, and rising sea levels. But its history will remain a popular myth. What do you think about this story? Would you like to visit this underwater city? Would you take a flight to this place and swim in its waters in search of new mysteries? Number 2. The oldest computer. The following discovery we owe to a storm on the island of Anticythera. A century ago, one of the most perplexing and complex objects in the ancient world was discovered by accident. A team of marine sponge researchers took refuge in the sea, hoping to be lucky. Instead, they came across the remains of a Roman galley that had been shipwrecked 2,000 years ago. Right at the bottom, the greatest treasures rested, beautiful statues of copper and marble. But we won't talk about that, but rather of a piece of rotten brass no bigger than a modern tablet. We're talking here about a primitive computer. This one had been built 2 millennia ago in ancient Greece. It's hard for us to imagine that someone could create a mechanical device like this, which means it's a computer built in the year 70 AD. The artifact has 82 recovered fragments. However, through images with X-rays and gamma rays, it was determined that several pieces were missing. What amazes us about all this is that it may be necessary to rewrite the entire history of Western technology. Who would think that the Greeks could produce these gear systems? We mean no one can deny that Greece was one of the most creative cultures that ever existed, without forgetting its broad development in all fields, including astronomy, science, and it's considered to be the mother of mathematics. The Greeks knew the movement of the celestial bodies in space, and they could even calculate their distances, and they knew the geometry of their orbits. Why is it so hard for us to believe that they could create a computer then? The most probable thing is that this artifact was able to combine the studies of astronomy and mathematics, and it was programmed to follow the movement of the moon. Many studies are needed to determine how they created this artifact, but we can come up with some hypotheses in the meantime. Number 1. The Apollo 11 rocket. If you ever thought you were a capricious person, after listening to the story you'll leave that idea behind. The founder of the multi-billion-dollar company Amazon, Jeff Bezos, has searched the ocean for the remains of the Apollo 11 rocket engine. Just like you're hearing, the instrument which drove astronaut Neil Armstrong into space in 1969 was recovered. Those remains were in the depths of the Atlantic Ocean for more than 40 years. If you're curious about where they are now, well, hold on. Jeff Bezos tells us in his blog he found an underwater gem, an incredible sculpture covered in seaweed which was the F1 engine. Now they're twisted, but they tell the story of an intense and violent ending, which serves as a testament to the Apollo 11 program. He also told us many of the engine's serial numbers had disappeared due to erosion, but that his team would try to restore them. Remember, this team had returned to Earth at a speed of 8,000 kilometers per hour and had impacted the ocean. The engines burned shortly after the launching. If you're wondering how he found them in the vastness of the sea, you'll be fascinated to know that they use a sonar at 4,267 meters deep. That means they use a technique of propagation of sounds underwater that's used to navigate, communicate, or detect submerged objects. Bezos also explains that although the quest was always financed by private funds, the engines would still belong to NASA given that he's a space enthusiast. This businessman was only 5 years old when he saw Apollo 11 on television. For him, this event was a great trigger of his passion for science, engineering, and exploration. His curiosity motivated him to know in what condition the engines might be. In fact, he wanted to know how they survived the shock against the water, and the fact of being underwater for so long. This recovery makes the engines the second most important piece of space history to be recovered from the bottom of the sea. Well, what's the first, you may be wondering? It's the Channel Liberty Bell 7 capsule recovered by Discovery. This had been used by the Mercury astronaut Virgil Grissom in the second U.S. space flight. The door had fallen off before time and Grissom was about to drown. Currently, it's part of the Smithsonian Museum in Kansas, and it's the centerpiece of the exhibition. Hope you enjoyed the video, Top Fivers. If you haven't already, check out our other channel, Americano, to enjoy even more amazing list videos. There'll be a link in the description, so check it out as well.